I'm Elizabeth MacDuffie. I'm founding editor of Meat for Tea, the Valley Review, arts and literary journal. I've been putting my publication out for 13 years now.
I'm Mark Miller. I'm the graphic designer for Meat for Tea, and Elizabeth's better half, she's my better half. Let me start that one more time. I'm Mark Miller, and
Scratch. This all began in the adjunct faculty offices of Holyoke Community College when I was sitting there next to my colleague, Alexandra Wagman, who turned to me and just said one day, "We should start a literary zine." And I said, "Okay, let's do that." We had that conversation in November, and by the next February, we had the first issue.
She had a really wonderful graphic designer by the name of Raphael Lino. So when he needed to leave the magazine, the publication, for other work, she needed a graphic designer, and I was already there in-house. I'd had graphic design experience going back to the mid-'80s. Not my professional course, but I've designed a lot of album covers, CD covers, flyers, just many things like that over the years. So it's a pretty comfortable thing to jump into, although a bigger project than I'd ever tackled. But I had Raphael's design to start me off.
A big thing of what I looked at and what I like to do critical writing about was the idea of Carnival and Topsy-Turvy World and Rabelais. So that informs a lot of my intellectual thinking for what I'm trying to curate. It's got a punk rock edge, but literary virtuosity, intellectual agility. You know, there's a level of academic rigor underneath that whole punk rock. A whole lot of punk rock fun, but there's a backbone, a spine of serious study.
Well, Meat for Tea being not just a literary journal, but an arts and literary journal has always been, since day one, images as well as writing. It's very important that it is a visual magazine in that sense, and then to integrate the text and the formatting of the text with the images and make them cohesive so it's not jarring when you run across an image, unless it's supposed to be jarring. The format from front to back flows. A sans serif body text is not what you often find in a journal, but I think it's highly legible. It allows us to put a lot of content in. Well, it's very flexible.
When I was a kid, I read a lot of stuff about the New York art scene from like 1959 to 1961.
You can steer clear of art by mixing up your happening with life situations. Make it unsure even to yourself if the happening is life or art.
It was always in the back of my head that I wanted to make something like a happening. So I wanted to create something like that where people are immersed in multiple media, art on exhibit, films, spoken word, live music. I think the instances for coming together and meeting a population of creatives in a physical space, I think that they're diminishing. So this is keeping that alive.
I think the impact of physically being at a show or a gallery or a reading versus seeing the same work
On YouTube.
on your phone or on a screen. You might enjoy the content just as much, but I don't think it creates quite the same memory.
Meat for Tea and the Cirques do more than just provide a good multimedia party, but also are a community of artists and writers and musicians, all of whom, whether they were friends before, end up being friends. There's a lot of relationships that were formed because of Cirques. So my hope is to get people together that can possibly give an emerging artist a leg up, mentorship. I think in the physical space of the Cirques, that's something that does occur and will keep occurring. Within the pages of the magazine, I have the same eye to publishing a mixture of emerging writers and artists along with established ones. This is stuff that matters to people. This is stuff that changes how people are perceived by others, changes how they perceive themselves. Meat for tea, MEATFORTEA. Sometimes people hear it and they think, oh, how quaint, meat for tea. But the name actually came about back in the days of MySpace, when a fellow was attempting to ask me out, and he asked if I wanted to meet for tea. And he spelled it like that. And as a professor of English, obviously he didn't get a date. But I liked the way the words looked. I like how it almost skews palindrome, and I knew I had to grab it. So I said, what about meat for tea? Which is perfect. Colon, and she did the Northampton Review, adding a little bit of gravitas underneath, the initial silliness.
Driving down the street, what's that I see? What's that on the road?